welcome to everyone to today's webinar, AI and Audits and Certification. I'm Mike Richmond, and I'm your host, a moderator for this event. Before we get started, a quick bit of housekeeping. If you're watching this session live, please feel free to ask questions at any time. You can do so by using the Q&A button that's right at the bottom of your screen down there. I see one or two of you already asked a question. And then at the end of the session, I'm going to pose your questions to our presenter. If you're watching this on demand, you can still ask questions as well. You can just go ahead and write us at info@exemplarglobal.org, and then you'll have a chance to we'll have a chance to get your questions over to our presenter. And speaking of that presenter, today's speaker, Jochen Klebold, is the head of analytics and AI with Intact Systems, and Intact is the industry-leading cloud and on-premise ERP technology company for audit, assessment, certification, accreditation, and standards management. Jochen has a lengthy background, not only in data analytics and artificial intelligence, but also in food safety and auditing. He applies his wealth of experience to fundamental issues in the food safety certification industry, where he's been a noteworthy practical and scientific contributor for more than 16 years. So with that, take it away, Jochen.
Thank you very much, Mike, and a warm welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching from. I'm very excited to be here today with you and talk about one of my favorite topics. There's really where my passion lies, and I'm working in for the last couple of years. It's data science, it's AI, and everything that it has to do with that topic and make it actually applicable for the audit and certification industry. So my goal for today is, when I sat down and said, okay, make another presentation about AI in the audit and certification industry. I mean, I've done a couple over the last years. I was thinking, what can I give to you that is really valuable? And there are so many ways of tackling this topic. Being like more on a conceptual level, really give examples. And today I try to give you a little bit of a mixture to give you also concepts, that you can like understand better when we talk about AI and different use cases, but also to give you like things that are already in use out there and that we already use in the audit and certification industry, and that you get a better feeling and understanding for all of this. Okay, just for all the ones who don't know us, I'm with Intact for quite a long time. The AI and data science part of Intact, I was kind of like the founder of, you could say. So our basic product is an ERP system covering the whole audit workflow, from like an application of an auditee to audit planning, to the actual audits, to the audit reviews, to the certification, and even invoicing. So the whole audit workflow is used by our customers. Some use all of it, some just parts of it. But we do that now for more than 20 years. So we have quite an experience in that. And it's just not food safety. It's pretty much, that's kind of like where it started, organic and food safety. But now, for example, also the aerospace industry is a big customer of ours. Here you see a couple of them just to get that you get a feeling of like what we're doing and the size and the scope of it. So you see, for example, a lot of standard setters, a lot of certification bodies, but also retailers that are our customers are pretty much around the world. Okay, but now let's dive into the topic. And to understand things, it's sometimes good to take a step back and look at the development, how we actually got here today, right? So I'm pretty sure everyone heard about this thing, ChatGPT, where, my passion lies with AI, but I'm also a critical thinker. So you will not hear just the pep talk about AI today, but also probably some of the limitations or the challenges that we face today or we will face in the future. Having said that, so looking a little bit back and about how we started all of this. And when you look at technology, it always comes in waves. right? So you could say the first wave leading to AI was paper-based audits. So the first technology that we were using actually was paper. And that was a good thing to do because it's, quite practical to write and jot things down. Um, the second wave then was this digitalization, right? So going away from this paper-based audits to really software slash databases and capturing information in as data, digital data. And this had a couple of advantages. It's quite flexible, right? So just imagine writing things in an Excel file, for example. You can, it's kind of like a fabric. Data is kind of like fabric, right? You can move it around. You can fold it. You can extract it. You can do various things with it. So it's kind of flexible. Another great thing is that it's shareable. So you can say, okay, look, this piece of data, I see it now, but I want to actually copy it and send it out and share it with others. You can scale it. Speaking of copying, you can make thousands of copies for all this, right? And you have it in different places, stored in different ways, not just Excel files, but also in emails and PowerPoint presentations, wherever you want to have this piece of data sitting. And of course, databases and software. And it's the basis for automation. This is what we're dealing with at Intact, that you can automate certain work steps along the audit workflow and really make it go from A to B, having a transition in between. For example, you have like all the audits listed that you have to do in 1 year. Then you have the audit planning work step, right? Where you use this kind of raw data and mold it in that way that you can say, okay, next week, Jake is going to this and this audit team and does this and this audit, right? So and this is kind of like you can have automation steps in between for all of that. For example, every time I'm going to receive an audit, I'm going to store it there and there and there. And then I'm going to inform A, B, C to do X, Y, Z with it, for example. So this is really the basis for the automation and efficiency and effectivity drive we see today. And it's computer readable, whatever that means. But computer system can, to a certain extent, see it and do things with it, right? So with the that's a software. That's what a software does, right? So this has a lot of advantages and brought us, I would say, to the state we are in right now. But also, it's kind of like it ebbs off now. So this waves ebbs off now. So the digitalization, how we call it is the saturation is quite good, what we see. Um, and so the next technology wave can take over. And this next technology wave is what we are a strong believer of is AI. And actually, in tech, we're not in the AI game for a couple of months or 1 or 2 years. It's actually more than 8 years. I believe it's even 9. Yeah. So we started very early in all of this. Back in the days, it was data science and analytics. And because our customers were asking, we have so many data points in our databases with you in the software. What can we do with it? We want to go the next level, and that's what we did, and what we're still working at. And I'm happy, very much happy to show you some of that today. But pretty much, advantage of AI, right? Whatever that is at the end of the day, but it should be able to automate more complex tasks. I was talking about audit planning, for example. It's still quite manual. You would like see a list, and then you as a human would say, okay, which auditor is actually qualified for it? Do they have time? When does other have time? What's the scope of the audit? Is it a recertification? Is it a surveillance audit? What is it? And then kind of like molding everything together, kind of like manually. Digitally supported, but it's kind of manually. This is something where we see already AI being a big helper. here, because this planning it's actually an optimization task from data science. So I would say we're quite good in that today, taking into account different factors and then coming up with an audit plan, kind of like pushing a button. So that is the idea behind that. Support decision making. Also auditors that they say, okay, look, we know when we have this and this finding. Actually, is it a finding for this scope that we're having right here, or this audit, or um, this standard that we're actually auditing against? Is this actually a finding, or what do we have to do with it? Here, for example, we can have real-time information flowing in and like, yeah, for this standard, there's that and that's threshold, so it's a finding. For the other ones, it's actually not. If you do like mixed audits or aggregated audits. So this comes into play here at the level of the audit itself, but also for management, right? So if you go into the area of risk-based auditing, for example, whom to audit, when and what, that can be a big helper. And it can support writing tasks. And that's what we actually see when we interview our customers a lot. It's like the back office work for an auditor is quite intense. So, writing audit reports, do all the manual stuff, even like writing, stay with findings and nonconformities, writing all of this, right? And then you miss something, it goes back and forth with a reviewer and so on. So these checks can kind of like be automated. Just some examples to name here. And I like that one. It's kind of like also find the needle in the haystack. Um, AI, as we know it today, the big strength is that it can analyze lots of audits at the same time. So it can see patterns, and I'm going to show you that in a minute, that this is really helpful as well. It can kind of learn. I would challenge that a little bit. Today, what we see, it's a very static learning and a very incremental learning, but future technology should be able to learn way faster. And yeah, it should kind of like support you along of the audit chain. And this is a very important thing I want to point out here. There are different philosophies in the AI sector and spectrum. And the biggest one I would say, and I'm a strong believer in that, we don't erase manual work, and auditors will be needed for sure in the future, because no system will be able to do what humans can, at least not the 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 basic work for a very, very long time. So that's gonna take a very long time. Let's put it like that, 10 plus, 20 plus years. But what it can do is actually it supports us. You have also this idea of like uh, that AI would actually be your little helper or co-pilot, as we know it now from Microsoft, where this is kind of like helping you along the way. Okay, so in a nutshell, when we're talking about AI, what we really want is automation 2.0, more efficiency and more effectivity. Yeah. So what we did with the digitalization on a next level. It's not just about efficiency and effectiveness. It's also about insights. As I said before, see more, do more. It's like looking at all the data points and see more than we did before. Once again, information is quite spread still in the databases. Things are not really coming together. But here we have really the opportunity for systems to see the big picture, for example, audit planning, and then come up with solutions and tell you interesting things that you might be interested in. For example, we have a trend somewhere in findings. We have uh, a pattern of a certification body, for example, always finding the same things, auditors as well. So these are things that were quite complicated to do back in the days, but get easier and easier to do. Various reasons. I would love to talk about it for a very long time, but try to keep it short. If you have questions, please ask in the chat, or also send us emails. Happy to answer that. And overall, actually, what it should be, it's increased quality, safety, and whatever the standard is promising, right? So we want to there is a reason why we do auditing. There's a reason why we have standards. There's a reason why we have this compliance. And the goal for this should be increased sustainability, quality, safety, and so on and so on. So that is also the goal for AI. Current state of AI, magic versus reality. And actually, for the current state, I'm happy to show you something that we have in production for now more than 3 years. Um, don't look at the details here. I just want to show you that actually, I want to point you to the anomaly detection, predictions, text classification, and statistics part here. Um, these are attributes of AI, right? So anomaly detection. Look through a lot of data and find things that are abnormal, that are, or at least they look a little bit fishy. These are things that we have created algorithms for 5 years ago, actually. Yeah, and we put it into production 3 years ago. Predictions. So we said, okay, look, there are comparable audits, and we kind of like can have machine learning put onto it and say, okay, can you predict a nonconformity or not, especially majors or minors? And that works to a very nice extent. Yeah. Not saying that all of this is true and should be a black box. Nobody knows what it does and just act irrational on top of it. This gives hints. This gives like a feeling for what is happening. And I'm going to show you that in a second, what that means in a system. And also back then, text classification, what nowadays ChatGPT is doing, these large language models, as they are called. We did with language models, so not the large ones, but the smaller ones. And we use them to read through free text or analyze free text. So the nonconformity descriptions are in free text in general, not really good to analyze. But with these language models, and nowadays with the large language models, it is getting easier and easier to also make use of this free text and also help auditors write reports, for example. Okay. So what did we do? Audit reviews. It was a big part for standard setters, especially in the food safety area, where we had um, also from the GFSI these compliance criteria that you have to have uh, checks on your incoming audits, right? And so this was actually massive amounts of data flowing in, a couple of thousands per year, depending on the standard. And looking through every single one of it would be impossible, right? But, and that is something which AI is made for. Um, Once again, it's not a little guy sitting in a database and going through it, but it's actually kind of like rule-based, but also algorithm-based. And you say, okay, I'm going to analyze every single audit and look for patterns. And that worked really, really well. So this is something that we see as a big, big helper in audit reviews. Seeing, okay, for example, what you would see is audits that are where something is not as intended, and you would like leave all the others alone. Yeah. So it's kind of like looking at the ones who are not in the norm, so to say, and then having someone expert really looking at it. And the others are just scanned, so to say, or monitored automatically. Text. So the other one was with algorithms, now also with text. What we could do here, and this for the first time was very insightful, that we were looking through all the non-conformities and found topics, so to say. And then what standard setters would start to do is to say, okay, look, for this section of the audit, we always have A, B, C, D. Yeah. Why is that happening? And really reasoning back, okay, why is this always happening and still happening? And how we can help our whole ecosystem, the auditors, but also the auditees and all the other stakeholders to really get a hand on this. So really understand what's happening because it's happening all over again. And then have measures for it, educational measures, sending out, also working on the standard version and on the next one to really get a hold on all of this. Worked really well and is now used in a broad manner. And well, yeah, I mean, this was a very manual work before. Now it's kind of semi-automated. You would expect very high numbers in productivity increases. That's a high number, the 40 times productivity increase, but once again, it was very manual before, and now we automated it. You would expect something like this. But what really kind of like surprised us was the 98% detection accuracy. So what we did is also to say, okay, look, whenever you see something, when they checked it manually, tell us if it was right or wrong. If there is really something that is to look at, or if it's just wrong. And even with the old technology, so to say, we had 98% detection accuracy, which is quite high, I would say. This is one part, productivity increase. Do what you do, but kind of like automated. But what is fascinating also is to see new things emerging. For example, what we saw, and actually we thought that's a failure in our system, but we had a very high value for a certain area of a standard with a certain certification body, and we figured that with the new version of a standard, it was completely interpreted in a different way there. Yeah. And so we could see, okay, wow, we really have something here in the standard ecosystem, what shouldn't happen, and could stop it before it really, like grew to a real problem. Okay, good. So that was all before the Holy Grail, the silver bullet, ChatGPT. And I say that with a little bit of sarcasm because that's always when you have these hypes. And well, you know, it is a big milestone for all this data science AI topic, and what we have seen so far with the large language models. It is really impressive. It is indeed from a technological viewpoint. Now it depends what we're going to do with it, but of course we have Intact said, and okay, look, we have this new technology. There's a technology push, as we call it. The other end would be the customer pull of technology. And we have this strong push right now, and let's dive deeper into it and do an analysis, also play around with it, yeah, ourselves, so we get it sandboxes and really laid our hands on it and said, okay, what can it do? What can't it do today? Where do we see the strength? Where do we see the weaknesses? And I mean, right, there was this big wow effect with ChatGPT. You would just put an audit report in it and say, okay, look, and do an analysis on this whole audit report and find weak spots in it. And just that for example, here we had also in a previous step, the model instructed with the right standard, with the right compliance criteria, and so on and so on. And it would go through it and would find very, very accurately what are the weak points and where you should look a little bit closer. Let's put it like that. And it looks so impressive. And the thing is also, it kind of looks intelligent, right? So uh, it seems to have some rationality. It looks like it could think even because it's not just doing that once and just sits there, but you could ask also questions, follow-up questions, right? Or say, okay, not interested in what you just did here. Do a different analysis. Yeah. So it's kind of like really having like this helper or this co-pilot with you, helping you to do things that were for sure not possible 1 or 2 years ago. So that was definitely a wow effect, I think, not just for us in who are experts in this field, but also for customers, for auditors, for everyone in the industries. So quite impressive. Nevertheless, I would say there are things today which are missing. Security. It's still not really known what's happening with the data. I mean, of course, there's a lot of, and I'm not just talking about ChatGPT, there are others out there um, with these large language models. Um, it's still, I would say, questionable or not really 100% transparent what's happening. So security is a big topic. The second big topic is that you can connect your data to it, meaning your databases, your specific data, your knowledge bases, and so on. This is still a challenge today. Um, Third one, it understands you and your business. So meaning it's a very broad, knowledgeable language model, you could say, but not tailor-made for one standard or a couple of standards and your business. That is still something that is missing. Teach and personalize, once again, that's now I would say a little bit better with these new generations, but still um, really learning from all of this is a weakness. And one of the biggest ones, especially when you want to go in a software product, or for us as a software product company, make it proactive. Um, right now, it just sits there and waits that you type something in to be prompted, as it's called. And we have to find ways to make it proactive. I mean, it's not that complicated when you know what you want to do, but nevertheless, you have to know what you want to see and how you can achieve that. Here, that's a concept I wanna introduce and give to you, kind of like and it goes with the one that I just mentioned before. We're gonna see a lot of horizontal Gen AI like ChatGPT, but really for the audit and certification industry, for example, and even going deeper for certain sectors, stakeholders, may that be auditors, may that be standard setters, may that be certification bodies whatsoever, they need specialized models. And we call that horizontal versus vertical AI. We have to have a strong industry focus, deep domain knowledge. Yeah, that's taking more technology, but here that's the very important one, accuracy, because these broad models, what we call hallucinations, right? Sometimes they are just making things up, like we humans do. We made it actually quite human. They sometimes just tell you things which are not really true. And this is something that you can start to get a hold of it with this vertical Gen AI. Once again, a source is Gartner, a very good source for concepts and all of that. But having said that, that's going to play a major role also for us as Intact. Vertical Gen AI, that means kind of like fine-tuning or even retraining these large language models using other components of artificial intelligence like predictions, like optimization algorithms, and combining all of that and make a real product out of it. The other one, which is a big concept and is kind of like now we're getting more into like what will you be able to do in the future? BYO is like bring your own AI versus built-in AI. What does that mean? So bring your own AI would be, for example, you're an auditor or you're a reviewer, an audit reviewer, or whatever job description you have, and say, okay, look, I have this thing called ChatGPT, and here is all my information, all my data, and now I want to do an analysis on it. So that kind of like would be like bring your own AI, where data is kind of like scattered, but you have like a tool, an AI tool sitting there that is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. Yeah, it can do various things, and you say, okay, for example, here is my work documents, create me an audit report. Yeah, then that's it. Versus things that are come naturally with the tool set that you're already using. For example, Microsoft Copilot, when you have a Word document or when you have an Excel file, it already is kind of like built into the tool set. Also for the Intact platform, for example, when you do an audit planning or do an audit review, as we have seen before, then the AI is kind of sitting in there, and it's like you don't have to do anything with your Swiss Army knife, ChatGPT. It's sitting already in there and it's helping you in your workflow. So these are two different streams that we're going to see emerge. And just for you and for categorization and that you know what's happening. And also for us, that's very important at Intact because that's also our strategy. And that you will see this strategy emerging in a lot of tool sets out there. For example, the Jira, Atlassian, might some of you need use that, but also Salesforce, for example, and so on. You're gonna have this, we call it Intact Intelligence Basic. Yeah. It's kind of like as the Swiss Army knife, so to say. Yeah. And the real advantage here is that you can do things nowadays where you would have to need coding in the past. Yeah. For example, data search. If you want to find real good data sets, for example, even in the inter-platform today, you need to know some coding, SQL coding. Or data analysis, you would need to do some Python, talk some Python language. Um, Translations, not so much, but monitoring of data, having these agents working for you and monitoring data streams, incoming data streams. This is something that we see in a basic level. That's kind of, you could say that's like a built-in Swiss Army knife with the advantage of having it secure, having it trained models really for your needs, but still a kind of like this Swiss Army knife approach. On the other hand side, you have use cases. Use cases are more like encapsulated workflows, um, stepwise tasks that you would do with like the basic ones, but really like gathered together once again as a example audit planning, audit reviews, and so on and so on. But here you have like this tool set really built into the user interface where it would help and where it helps you to do your tasks. Once again, these use cases go from application to client quotations, the audit itself, findings and corrective actions, reviews, certificates and certification, and so on and so on. So kind of like every single step in the workflow might have its own built-in AI. And on top of it, you could say there's going to be a Swiss Army knife. Yeah, for example, Salesforce calls it Einstein. Atlassian calls it Robo. Yeah, so these are Swiss Army knives. Bring your own AI uh, is already emerging. Yeah, gonna not go too much into detail here. That's breaking barriers, as we call it. Yeah, data insights with no code. And how we did that, I want to show you, for example, data search, right? So we have a huge database as in the Integ platform. And if you're a little bit literate into data and how to combine data, or actually how to store data, you know that it's quite a challenge to come up with a good data sets for every analysis. Yeah. So we often end up in like our operations team creating specific data sets for specific needs. And this is actually quite an intensive task. And the problem is actually the end user wants to do that themselves, right? And so what we did here is a data search. Um, so this is part of the Swiss Army knife. It's the data search, and you would say, okay, I have a chat with my assistant, right? And say, okay, list me all audits in a certain from a certain time in the last 12 months. Then it would process it, and I get the output, and then I say, okay, go further. Yeah, that's nice, but just give me the ones from Germany. And just give me the ones from a specific standard, and so on and so on. And it would go and actually fine tune your data set until you actually have what you need. And you see here some coding language be done. Yeah. So what the large language model does together with you is coding pretty much. And it comes up with a data set. And so this was our proof of concept. Now it's going to an MVP phase, a minimal viable product. We're going to launch that next year where we say, okay, we just want to have that for every single customer of ours. That the end user is able to create any data set they want to do. So And that is kind of like it sounds probably small, but it's a big breakthrough for a lot of our customers working with data and doing analysis on data every day by day. So it's really natural language to code what we're doing here. Yeah. What we could also show, and this goes also in the section that we said, okay, look, um, um, we need to have tailor-made models, is that we could teach it, and that this is the semantic mapping here, a finding is a deviation, is a nonconformity in that case. So please, whenever I talk about nonconformity, know that this is also a finding. Yeah. So this is so the semantic mapping we could do and show, which was a very important step forward. I'm running a little bit out of time, so I'm skipping forward. And the same thing going even further, imagine you have now your data sets, but now you would do some real analysis on and creating, for example, such graphs, right? Like you would see in Excel or in Tableau or whatever BI tool you're using. And we do kind of like do the same thing here. We have a little conversation with our little helper, the Swiss Army knife, and just I'm gonna skip through it. And here you say, see, for example, everything I'm gonna tell the AI to do, it's gonna be translated into Python code. Now, Python is a data analysis language, you could say, very common in data science these days. And what it does, you go through your data set and say, for example, yeah, give me, for example, all the outliers or the amount of audits that I did. Give me all the nonconformities that I found in X, Y, Z. How do I compare to others? Blah, blah, blah. And you would come up with these visualizations. And I didn't do anything in Excel or any other like BI tool or anything else. It's just natural language talking, so to say, to my system. Um, the system grabs the data, does an analysis on top of it, and then you refining it to what you're actually looking for. And even you could ask it, what did I miss? Yeah. What else can I do with my data? Any ideas? Look at the data, find me interesting things, trends, topics, whatsoever. And it would actually come up with some quite interesting stuff. So especially the last part that I was talking about is increasingly interesting for data exploration for our customers and has a lot of value. And here we bring it actually to the fingertips of the end user. And that is the big, big breakthrough. An end user using our system can do things which you would have needed one or two translation steps to a data engineer, and they just can do it themselves. So this is really what amazes us at this stage. But of course, when you look further into the future, audit report writing, um, um, for example, you get a preparation document whenever you go to an audit that is tailor-made for this auditee. Look, we had similar findings that and that and that with this commodity. That's the audit history of all of the the auditee. We have had similar findings there and there and there. Yeah. So these are all things that we're currently working on with our customers. We have a separate product, a separate project, or yeah, separate project with them. We call that customer AI projects, where we work together with our clients to come up with this AI solutions. Another one for the Swiss Army knife would be audit translations. We see that a lot, and what we also see is that this bring your own AI is already used to quite an extent. Especially certification bodies have figured that out, and that's quite a problem. Once again, data security. You shouldn't do that. DeepL is not a safe environment for your translations, neither is ChatGPT in writing audit reports. So we said, okay, and it's actually not good enough, to actually um, have very good translations in the audit sector. We're dealing here with a lot of different languages, sometimes not full sentences, spelling errors, and so on and so on. And also the semantic mapping is a problem. So we have our own large language models trained, especially on that, and we could achieve very, very good translation quality. We did that proof of concept with a very big certification body, and we are now at a stage where we start developing that further and rolling that out also next year, which just makes it easier for people to write good reports also in a language that they might not be so good in. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope I covered at least some of the things that you wanted to hear or are interested in. Once again, you could look at this topic from various directions, and every direction would need more than 1 or 2 hours. Um, I hope I gave you some ideas to think a little bit differently about all of these AI topics. Once again, more than happy to answer your questions. And yeah, if we cannot cover your questions today, please write your questions to Mike,
Mhm.
and then we see what we can do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I was going to just mention that you can, of course, if you are watching this on demand, you can write us at info at exemplarglobal.org, and we'll be happy to get your questions over to the team for response. We do have a lot of questions. I had one that I think maybe would address some of the feedback that I got during the session from viewers. Kind of the limitations of the tool at this point and some of what you see coming forward. I know there's some basic things that we can do now, but as we continue to progress into this world in the coming years, what do you foresee as some of the advancements that will allow us to do more with AI?
Mm. Um, I believe I covered some of it, but what we're gonna see is a lot of these specialized tool sets. Yeah. So, for example, you're using a tool for auditing, um, writing your reports, writing your nonconformities should be easier in the coming years for sure. Because actually, this is something that especially Gen AI, generative AI, is very good at. Writing. So checking text and writing text. So this is actually something that is very good at. Um, I expect that to kind of like hit the shelves in 1, 2, 3 years,
Mhm.
for sure. Um, but also the challenge that comes with it, or where the limitations are, is, as I mentioned before, is these hallucinations. Sometimes we trained AI the way we think, kind of, you could say. It's like, and if you don't have an answer, just make something up. The problem with it is right now we don't know what is that part that
Mhm.
was kind of made up. Yeah. And we cannot see that. So we have to find ways to make uh, that we can see that. Yeah. So that we can find measures for that. I mean, that really depends on the use case. For example, we have this also in the data search and what I just showed you before. And we have mitigation methods for that. And there are mitigation methods around for, I would say, a lot of use cases. But that's still in development. And once again, it's going to be like this bring your own AI to work, and it's going to be that built-in tools for specific use cases. So I think both of that we will see. Yeah.
A lot of questions as you addressed this partially in your presentation. A lot of questions about data security, data protection, of course, and we know there's limits on an open source tool such as this. So, companies that maybe will prohibit AI, the use of AI
Mhm.
in their workplace auditees. Any feedback on that? Any workarounds for that, or again, will it be something that maybe is a next generation tool that will be able to manage that in a more closed way?
It is one of the biggest challenges and topics, I would say, these days. And it goes right into legislation. Here in the European Union, we have the AI Act, which is very, very rigorous in what you can do and what you cannot do. And I support that. I'm a big supporter of that. Especially when you're using Gen AI, this large language models. We did see examples where information was exposed that should not have been exposed. So, like personal data that it was trained on, obviously, yeah. And this is something that cannot happen. Now we do see the good thing is you now could say, okay, no, we're gonna stop everything. We don't gonna do anything with it anymore. But we do see a lot of tools coming up for companies like us to prohibit that. That this is something that okay, we need tools to make AI more secure, and they are there. Are they in the quality that we need them? No. Um, and that's actually why you see not so many things emerging as you would have expected it after the ChatGPT hype, so to say, after 1.5, 2 years almost ago, you would have thought, oh my God, and now the whole industry is changing and everyone is just going to use it. And the question is, why didn't we? It's security. Yeah, it's because just imagine that shitstorm. If you're exposing this tremendous amount of data and personal details, uh,
Yep.
you cannot do that. And
Yep.
I'm quite grateful for all this legislation that is coming up right now.
Yep. Excellent point. Um, Another good question. How might auditors contribute to ensuring confidence and accuracy in results generated by AI in relation to the conformity assessment industry? For example, analysis of data by AI that's relied upon to demonstrate conformance to a particular standard or clause.
Good question. Um, in proof of concept that we have built, one concept that we're using is human in the loop, it's called. So you give feedback, kind of like use, yeah, Copilot also has this thumbs up, thumbs down, but ours goes a little bit, it's a little bit more in the sense of like you give also feedback on the accuracy, what went wrong, was it good, and you kind of like type it in, and you would get, for example, if it's really not helping or really prohibiting good auditing outcome, it would just stop doing things. Yeah. So it's if you see, okay, that is not helping me, it is actually making false statements or making the audit that I'm currently working on not as it should be, then it would just stop. So there are good ways on like giving feedback to tools. We just have to use it. And also there here you comes in the user UX part, making it really easy for people using tools to give feedback. That's going to be a big one in the
Yeah.
future.
Another good question. What's the customer adoption rate for AI to be used during their audits and for reporting? What are you seeing?
Um, Good question. For the products we have out there, we cannot really say it's for auditors because the auditors we're working with for the proof of concept, they're all early adopters. They love new tools, new things, so the adoption rate is 100%. So, but of course, that's not how you can measure this. For the audit review part, for example, um, the adoption rate is quite high, I would say. But also here, it's not really a good measure because companies buying that want their people to use it, and all of them are using it. So I would say we don't have the data to really come up with an AI adoption rate. I mean, what you see with ChatGPT these days, the numbers are exploding, right? And you would have thought that it would like kind of ebb down or ebb off at a certain point, but the numbers are still rising, and people obviously have found a way to really integrate that into their daily work. Uh, and even like if you don't trust the numbers completely, but there is a trend of higher and higher adoption. And I like to see that for sure. Nevertheless, I think it's going to be very different in the audit and certification industry. But here it's just my guess. The better tools we provide, the better the adoption rate is going to be.
Makes sense. Still have a lot of questions rolling in, so we'll go to the speed round here with a few minutes left. Is there a way that AI can help make report writing more efficient? Obviously, a big concern for auditors,
Hmm.
particularly in transferring data from a written format, paper or tablet, to a digital format.
Oh,
Good question.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Do we have a product off the shelf? No. Why? Data security reasons. It's not so much about the quality, and that's the interesting part. Once again, if you, for example, play around with ChatGPT these days, can uh, a written, I mean, it really depends on your handwriting, right? Obviously, but if it's some kind of like distinguishable, um, it does an amazing job. Also, Apple with its new notes, for example, when you have an iPad and you write on it, how it picks up your handwriting, I would say is really, really impressive. So digitalizing all of things that seems to be really, really, really great already, and this really have at the speed of quality increase is really high. But also in audit writing, right? So like in which format, what topics to cover in an audit report, what's the structure of an audit report? There we have already proof of concept out there, and that works really well. Yeah. Once again, why we don't have something out and hitting the shelf is data security, obviously, and good product management. But this is something that we're gonna see in the future for sure. I'm pretty positive about that.
Great. Do the data sets have to be in any specific format? Our audit data consists of PowerPoints, Excel spreadsheets, screenshots, Word documents, etc. That's pretty typical. Can it come through all that data to detect trends for, say, management review? Very practical
Mhm.
question.
Hmm. Yeah. And here we see, for example, Microsoft doing interesting things in that direction, right? If you use these days Microsoft 365 and you see the search, for example, and it would search through all a variety of documents, videos. If you have recorded a Teams call these days, right? And it would do a transcript and it's searchable and you would say, give me all information about a certain topic, and it just brings it together from all different file formats. That is going into that direction. And once again, here we are dealing with the tool set from Microsoft, but we're going to see that as well in our product, but also Salesforce, Atlassian. So that is something I would predict that we will see also in 3 to 5 years. Yeah.
Okay. And kind of a related question from another user wanted to ask about how do the tools perform when the data itself is poorly structured? And I think that I'm not quite sure if that means different file formats and different types of files, or if it just means the data itself is a little bit disorganized.
Yeah. And excellent question. Funny enough, what we are using AI these days most for is data quality.
Hmm.
You know, missing data, wrong data or not wrong data, but having data in the wrong field, for example. We see that so many times. And this is actually for increasing data quality. The first thing that we do when we analyze a data set is uh, cleaning the data set up with these AI tools to make it more reliable, to see things, to even see things. Is this data set even able that we are we able to analyze that? And and once again, we have came up with data quality measures where we say, okay, the data is good enough for analysis or this kind of analysis, and this one is not. For example, one of our biggest customers, we had a big data migration. And we see that some of the data is not not the way we can analyze it. Yeah, and we said,
Mm.
okay, everything before that date we cannot analyze. Yeah, but we have seen it with AI. That's the interesting part.
Great. Boy, here's a big question. Hopefully, I have enough time to answer this one. What are the key challenges businesses face when integrating AI into their operations, and how can they address them? Well, that's a pretty
Hmm.
broad. That's a pretty broad question.
Oh yeah, but a good one. And I do see two things here. Um, One thing is especially bigger, yeah, I would say the like bigger companies, they should start training programs for their employees using AI. Because I'm pretty sure that let's stay with ChatGPT, but whenever I say ChatGPT, it's with all the other things that are out there with large language models. Um, you can use it very effectively with a few tweaks. And it's very important to understand what you can do and what you can't do, what is good for and what is not good for. And to really bring that power of these new tool sets in the yeah, in the skill set of people. So that is one thing. And the other thing is um, we have customers also really, pioneers in their field where they say, we all go all AI, certifications body who say like that's going to be the game changer in the future. If you're not on board and not be the first ones, we're not going to be on the market in 5 years. That's how they see it, and they want to really create tool sets. So they are do a analysis on their work on their processes, their internal processes, and say okay, bringing also in externals, AI specialists, also us as a tool set provider, and say, look, that's our audit process. Where can we start? What can we do? Well, how can we? Is there already, for example, a tool set out there that we can already use? Can we develop something together with you, for example? And then we say, okay, look, that makes sense and that does not make sense. So if we want to start, use that, use ChatGPT for that and that and that, and create specialized tool sets. For example, one customer they had a very special review process, and we said, okay, we cannot use our standard review AI for that, but we have to create another one. But it's not actually not a big a deal to do that. Yeah, so we can just tweak that a little bit, and you can already start. So I would say analysis together with experts. If you're going to be really the pioneering and the forerunner in that field, you need experts looking at your internal processes. But on the other hand, so once again, this is, and that's why I started with it, training the staff in this direction is equally, if not more important to do. And you cannot start early enough, I would say. We already have tool sets out there. Auditors already are using ChatGPT and DeepL and all the other translation things. So why not having like training around that and say, okay, what makes sense to do and what doesn't make sense to do? And what is even uh, uh, what you shouldn't do, yeah, from a data security perspective. I think that is very, very important.
Wow. Well, that was a really good presentation. We unfortunately couldn't get to all the questions we have. We will answer your questions though offline if you did ask them. We didn't have a chance to get to them. So thank you for that. And of course, if you have questions on demand, just write us at info@exemplarglobal.org and we'll get them on. So thank you again for joining us, Jochen. Excellent presentation. Really good job today. Thank you for being here today. And we'll see you all at our next webinar here at Exemplar Global. Thanks again. So long.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.